All right. Hello, everybody. Yokoso, Saigo no session desu. That's the only Japanese I'm going to use for this session. Right? So anyway, we're going to be talking about SBOMs. Who here knows what an SBOM is? Okay, that's why you're all here. Okay, and we'll talk about some of the problems that you're probably already kind of aware of to give you a little bit of background, and then talk about how we're trying to fix them. So we'll turn it over to Dennis, my postdoc. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here at KubeCon and Cloud Native Con in Japan. My name is Yuchen Zhang, or you can call me Dennis, and this is Professor Justin Cappos. We're all from New York University. And today, we're going to talk about something essential but often misunderstood in the software supply chain, the SBOMs. More specifically, how today SBOMs often lies to us and what we can do about it using in-toto and a project called SBOMit. By the end of this talk, I hope to convince you that trustworthy SBOMs are not only possible, but also necessary. So let's start with a foundational question. When you ship a piece of software, do you truly know what's inside? And could you list every components, every library, and their origins? In theory, this is what SBOM promise. But in practice, most of us rely on automated tools that reverse engineers or infer dependencies from manifest. That's introduce uncertainty and risk. Think about the complexity of modern builds, language, runtime, dynamic loading, conditional dependencies. These all make the software supply chain murky. And let me walk you through a real-world scenario. Imagine you have a simple input. Let's see a text file hashing txt, and it gets passed to OpenSSL for hashing. Pretty routine, right? But there's the problem. What exactly is going on inside OpenSSL? OpenSSL itself relies on a stack of libraries under the hood, like libSSL, libcrypto, libdl, libc, and others. These libraries are often dynamic linked and put in from the system environment. From the outside, the whole operation is a black box. Now here's where things get dangerous. Let's say one of these libraries, like libcrypto.so, is vulnerable. You may be completely unaware that your binary even depends on it. And yet, it is vulnerable, like in the case of CVE 2023-50980 or CVE 2023-6237. You're exposed. Even worse, most developers have no idea these components are involved, because SBOM tools often don't catch these runtime linked libraries or system-level dependencies. So the question becomes, do you really know what's in your software? Not just what's declared in your cargo.toml or package.json, but what's actually used at runtime, linked into your binary, and potentially exploitable. If we don't know what's inside our software, we get burned. Back in December 2022, a severe vulnerability was discovered in log4j, CVE number 2021-44228, also known as log4shell. It allowed remote code execution via a simple string injection, one of the most dangerous type of exploits. But what made this incident truly explosive wasn't just the severity of the bug. It was how many organizations didn't even know they were using log4j. Log4j often hides in transitive dependencies. It's buried deep inside framework, service, or package we don't directly include, but still depends on. So when the CVE dropped, many severity teams were caught off guard. They had no SBOM, or their SBOM were inaccurate. So they couldn't quickly answer, are we affected? Now look at the chart on the right side. This is the number of attacks attempted exploiting log4shell, tracked by Checkpoint Research. Just 12 after public disclosure, there were already 40,000 attacks. This number tripled by 24 hours and reached 400,000 after 36 hours. And within 72 hours, attacker had launched over 830,000 exploit attempts. That's nearly 1 million attacks in just 3 days. This is what it looks like when visibility fails. When you don't know what's in your software, you can't protect it, you can't respond, and the result is not just a theoretically risk, it's very real damage. So how could this happen or have played out differently with a reliable SBOM? Let's walk through some of the biggest challenge organizations face during Log4j incident and how a good SBOM would have helped. First, Log4j often buried as a transitive dependency. Teams didn't directly include it, but it was pulled in by someone else, like a framework or a logging utility. A proper SBOM can map the full dependency graph, not just what you explicitly declared, but all transitive relationships, so you can detect hidden vulnerabilities. Second, many organizations didn't even know if they were vulnerable. SBOMs enable automated scanning and querying. You can run a query like, do I have log4j anywhere across all your software assets, and get an answer immediately. And third, assessing blast radius was a nightmare. SBOMs that are centralized across all organizations let you scale analysis. You can quickly identify which team, system, or business units were exposed. And the fourth, patching was delayed and inconsistent. With version SBOMs, you can detect outdated components faster and track patch rollouts more systematically. You're not warning for someone to notice. It's visible in the metadata. And last, vendors often told customers, we're not affected, but had no proof. SBOMs bring transparency. If a vendor claims that they don't use Log4j, a visible SBOM allows customer to confirm that. It shifts trust from being implicitly to being evident backend. So yes, SBOMs, when done right, can be a powerful foundation for incident response, vulnerability management, and accountability. Now let's bring the conversation to the room with a quick poll. Raise hand if you generate SBOM for a software, whether it's automatically through CI/CD pipeline or manually. Okay, decent number of hands. And now let's keep your hands up if you actually trust this SBOM. Okay, that's usually filtered out of the room. Why? Because we know the tooling isn't perfect. Static SBOM often miss components or include things that aren't actually used. And finally, how many of you have never worked with an SBOM at all? Okay, that's okay. This is still a growing space, and part of the reason we are here today is to raise awareness and shift towards trustable, verifiable practice. This poll isn't just for fun, it reflects industry-wide trends, and there's a gap we need to close, not just by producing SBOMs, but by making sure they're honest and usable. Let's go to the pie analogy for a moment. When you walk in a store and pick up a packed pie, there's a label on it, an ingredient list. You can see what went into it, like flours, butters, eggs, maybe nuts. This list is essential, especially if you have allergy or some concern. You need to trust what's written there. Now let's bring back to software. SBOM serve the exact same purpose. They are mean to give you a breakdown of all the ingredients. What makes up your application, which library, which version, who automated them, and where they came from, and what license they use, and so on. You can see the parallel visually here, the pie and its ingredients, the software and its module and APIs, and finally, the structured SBOM representation that organizes all the data, dependency, license, suppliers, and versions. But just like in food, if that ingredient label is missing something, or if it's outdated or fake, it can be dangerous. The challenge is that today's SBOM are often incomplete or inaccurate. What we need is not just a label, but a label that we can trust, based on actual evidence, not just the declarations. Here's where things start to fall apart. Most SBOM today are created after the build is complete. That might sound reasonable at first, but think about what that really means. It's like trying to label a pie after it's baked, just by smelling it. Sure, you may pick up hints of cinnamon or apple, but you're guessing. You don't know for sure what went in or whether someone swapped ingredients mid-recipe. In practice, today's SBOM often generate by reading static files, like cargo.toml, requirements.txt, or package manifest. But these don't reflect what was actually compiled or linked. They tell you what was intended, not what was used. That leads to real gaps. These SBOM can miss runtime loaded components, platform-specific dependencies, or transitive package that sneak in during the build. Worse, because the SBOM is created post hoc, it's easy to tamper with. Someone could change the artifact, but leave the SBOM untouched, and you have no idea. The bottom line, today's SBOM can lie to you, not because the author are malicious, but because the process isn't verifiable. And in security, guessing aren't good enough. We need evidence. Let me show you a real-world example from our own lab using Rust project OXIPNG. This is a multi-threaded PNG optimizer. It's open sourced, actively maintained, and fairly typical for what many of us work with. If we generate SBOM from it, we can see it contains 12 dependencies and 36 transitive dependencies. At one point, someone in our lab accidentally added a dependency on third day into cargo.toml file because we were trying to modify OXPNG on our own, but it wasn't used anywhere in the actual code. No imports, no execution, but it remained in the manifest. Now here where things get interesting. When we generate SBOM using conventional tools, third day showed up in the SBOM, and not just the third day, it dragged into 5 transitive dependencies. So our SBOM claimed that the software have 13 direct dependencies and 41 transitive dependencies for a total of 54 components. But in reality, only 12 direct and 36 transitive were truly used. The rest were noise, phantom entries based on declaration, not actual usage. This is the perfect example of how today's SBOM can lie. They don't differentiate between what's listed and what's actually compiled. The results? A bloated dependency graph, a false sense of risk. Instant response might spend hours or days hunting vulnerabilities in components that aren't even present. And it leads to waste effort, lost trust in SBOM, and automatically bad security decisions. And this is just one line of code. Imagine that what happened at the enterprise scale, where hundreds of servers and thousands of dependencies exist. This isn't a theoretical problem, it's a real operational challenge. And even if you have an SBOM, that's not the end of the story. SBOM are helpful, but they are not a silver bullet. Let me walk you through why. Let's follow in this simple supply chain from writing code to build, to package, and then delivering to users. This is the typical point where SBOM are generated during or after the packaging phase. But a lot can go wrong before and after that moment. Point A, an attacker can compromise your version control system and insert malicious code. This is what happened in case like kidnap or backdoor PYPI packages. SBOMs won't catch that because they rely on what was declared or built, not who authored it or how it was verified. Point B, your testing process might be missing or worse, might fail silently. A component that shouldn't be flagged gets through again. The SBOM records that was compiled, now was tested or validated. Point C, the compiler itself could be compromised. This happened in SolarWinds or Xcode Ghost. Malicious behavior was injected during the build process, but the SBOM still showed all the right ingredients, just like a full label that says organic while hiding the contaminants. And point D, even when SBOM are generated, different vendors and tools may generate them inconsistently. This creates blind spots, missing metadata, and the gaps in visibility. This fragmentation makes it hard to correlate risk across your ecosystem. And point E, finally, SBOM themselves can be forged if they are not cryptographically signed and verified. Attacker can create counterfeit SBOMs and pass them off as trustworthy. So while SBOMs are a great start, they only capture a slice of the truth. What we need is a way to verify the full story of supply chain. Who did what, when, and with what input. That's where in-toto and SBOMit come in.
All right, thank you very much. Oh, this way. Okay, so this project that we have under the OpenSSF, the sandbox project, is called SBOMit. And one of the first questions you might have is, what does this name mean? It sounds like a strange name. It's just SBOMs plus the IN from in-toto. So that's why it has this name, SBOMit. And then the next question, yeah, so I'll go through, sorry, I'm getting, wait, there we go. They didn't make this idiot-proof. So basically, let me explain the basics of what in-toto does. So in-toto generates software supply chain attestations. Attestations, when you hear people talk about salsa attestations or like tecton chains attestations or attestations anywhere in the software supply chain, at the fundamental level, they actually all boil down to in-toto attestations. And the conceptual way to think about this is an attestation is like a snapshot of what's happening at some step of your software supply chain. What it does is, first of all, you have a software supply chain like the one we see here with all the different parties that are doing their different types of actions here. And then what attestations do is for each of these different actions that are happening here, like let's say we're going and we're building software here, then it tracks the secure hashes of all of the files that are coming into the build process. It looks at what happens in the build process to make sure it's not returning errors, to understand things about the environment. Is it actually running on your build server? Is it being signed by your HSM or whatever you have there? Is it running the correct binary? And then it looks at the binaries that are produced out of this. Like what are the kind of, the things that come out of the compiler that need to be passed further along. And then what this layout does is it connects all those steps together. So we have the individual attestations here for each step. and the layout connects them. And these are really widely used. GitHub automatically generates them in many cases. They're used throughout like tons and tons and tons of companies. If you're doing stuff with Sigstore attestations, then this is what you're doing. And so this analogy, the way to think about what an attestation is imagine that you have this, you're making pies, you have this pie making factory. And an in-toto attestation is like someone who's taking a picture of everything that comes in. Like, oh, there's apples that are being delivered. Let me take a picture of the truck and let me watch them being unpacked, and let's watch them be washed and cut and cleaned and stuff like this. And the same for all the other ingredients and stuff like this. And so you see, oh, there were apples that came in. We took pictures of those. They went through this process. They were toasted first, and then they were put into the pie, and the cinnamon was delivered from the grocer, and that was poured in, and so on. And so you get all of these different attestations for the different parts of your software supply chain. And each attestation is like looking at some action that's happening in your supply chain. It could be a dependency coming in, it could be your build, it could be your test process, it can be everything inside of that. Does everyone understand the basic idea? Pictures all throughout making the pie. And then you take these attestations, you collect them, you can extract information out of these and use this to go and create SBOMit. What it does is it uses these to actually create an SBOM. So it's like taking all of these individual cryptographically signed, secure pictures of everything and using that to make your SBOM. So now you know that this software was used because you have a picture of it coming into your kitchen. You know this apple made its way into the pie, and if someone tries to sneak something in, in-toto will detect that and stop that. And so you get a correct thing where hopefully for compliance and other reasons, you don't have to have somebody with a clipboard. People use in-toto attestations and things like that to check those boxes automatically to show compliance and to show what actions are happening, that they're doing the right things. Yes. And so this gives you what we call, a verifiable SBOM. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second here. So first, we're going to have a demo. Do you want to narrate the demo?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So on the left side.
You have to talk loudly or into the mic.
Okay. So on the left side, we have a bunch of attestations. This is one of the examples. You can see it contains a different field like materials, products, and this is one of the crates, or we call it one of the components, which is the ByteVac version 1.01. It also contains all the different parts, and we have the SHA 256 to cryptographically sign that. And then here is the final product, the SBOM. Right now, we have a prototype that can generate SPDX version 2.3. And you can see we have all the necessary field being filled out by the in-toto attestations. And we can also provide the relationships that SPDX support. For example, if this component is from the build process that was used to build the final product, and also other relationships, and also besides the components, we can also provide the files that are being used to generate the SBOM.
Okay, yes. Awesome. I saw you got confused by your clicker too. I don't feel so bad now. Okay. So before we talk more about this, I want to put this back up. These are a bunch of classic failures. There's the CrowdStrike outage and SolarWinds and all sorts of other really high impact things here. We're just using these as examples of types of attacks that could happen. In-toto protects against more than exactly these attacks, and so on. But this is like a good set of examples of high-profile things to start to look at. And so, oh, see, I did it again. A natural question today, what we're going to do is we have these 5 attacks here, A through E. We're going to look and see what happens if you do them today with the way SBOMs are done, for instance. Well, SBOMs today don't protect against any of these 5 attacks. If any of these happen, you're done. Signed SBOMs will stop someone who tries to forge it after you do the signature. Not before you do the signature, but after you sign them. So there's some limited protection, and this is really the best case for what people are doing today. And for this project, we've been doing, we have a plan, we have effectively 2 versions of this. One that's very, very easy to adopt, doesn't require tool authors to do anything. And this provides you some limited protection in some of these important impactful cases. When we integrate in the policy checking and get some action from tool authors, we'll be able to protect against everything other than individual tool steps, individual things like the build, the compiler itself being completely hacked. We can't do anything about that because we just take a picture of, the compiler got this stuff in and it produced this stuff and it's your compiler, so it should be okay. Those types of attacks are more difficult, and there's other projects, reproducible builds and stuff like this, that addresses those. So if you use that, you'll get that fixed anyway. Okay, so you should treat SBOMs as part of your defense, not just a checkbox. This is quite an important kind of lesson, I think. Is, think carefully about them, think about how you use them, how they can be effective in your infrastructure. You should do things that are secure by design, support these concepts like zero trust you hear time and time again. In-toto is a big part of that. And you can prevent all sorts of different tampering and things like this, and really fundamentally enable fast vulnerability response, things like log4j in these types of situations. So we are, still in the process of building things out, and we have a fun community. We welcome you to join us on the Wednesday of every week. Unfortunately, it's rather late for you in APAC, but it is, it's 11 a.m. Eastern time, which would be 12, which would be midnight. So you're welcome to have a glass of beer or sake or whatever you want and call into the meeting and try things out. You can also join our SBOMit on the OpenSSF Slack. And one big message here is that if you really want security, you really want things to be authenticated and correct, if you're going and you're asking some vendor, someone for an SBOM, ask them for attestations with it. Attestations are the things that actually give you security guarantees, right? An SBOM just gives you like a neck to choke. It says, oh, they told me that it's their fault, right? But it doesn't actually solve the problem, and we'd like to actually solve the problem. So thank you. So if anybody is brave enough to ask a question, knowing that you're standing between everyone and the beer and dinner and stuff. Oh, there is some. Thank you.
Thank you for your talk and also for introducing this tool. But I must say that CVEs are not that dangerous. I mean, if you have a CVE and see it, okay, I mean, is it actually exploitable in your tool? Okay, you have a library that says, I have this CVE. Okay, fine. Do I even use this functionality? Can I even be affected? Same goes with the libraries. So, okay, they show some CVE, but whatever.
I really, this is a great question. I'm really glad you asked it. I know that you buy from a security vendor that gives you a dump of CVEs and doesn't do this in a very intelligent way. There's other work that we and others have done on cutting down on false positives, and it sounds like they're not doing that. They can do static analysis of code to see what's reachable and filter out all that garbage. So I'm sorry that your security vendor doesn't handle that with its tooling. But what you're saying, like the point is that CVEs do actually matter in practice, but getting to 0 CVEs is not necessarily important, especially if you have tooling that gives you a lot of false positives. So people are working on trying to remove those, and talk to your peers about who have fewer problems in that area would be a recommendation. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
One more question is about tampering thing.
Yeah.
I think this is really solvable with the signing. Like the thing about pushing unauthorized, unsigned code, let's say. It can be protected in GitHub. Let's say I only accept signed commits, right?
So if you push something that's not, that like goes against your code policy in GitHub, like your signing policy, is that the case, or?
There are signed, I have a GPG keys that are, I only accept commits that are signed with the following people, like with their keys. So it is solvable. About image containers, like do I trust them? Again, you can sign them. Tampering things like in between, I don't believe it. Like personally, you create everything under your control, and there is very, very little chance that you can actually tamper.
I mean, effectively, the SolarWinds attack was exactly the type of tampering you're saying shouldn't be able to happen, though. So I think in a scenario where you're saying there can't be tampering in my supply chain, there are examples that show that that can occur. And there's actually a software supply chain catalog that's maintained by Tag Security and Compliance that has a list of 100 and something attacks. And of those, I would wager to guess like 20 or so would be impacted by the types of things you're talking about. Maybe even more so if you are able to count things like someone breaking into a repository where people were not using commit signing. So it's, but anyway, security isn't necessarily about going from like possible to impossible. It's going from like easy to hack to harder to hack in many cases.
Yeah, of course.
And so this is one step on that journey, and is one of the reasons why I think it's, the different components like in-toto and SBOM individually have had some adoption. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, one last question is how much does it add overheading build time, let's say?
How does it change build time?
Yeah, like let's say my build takes 1 second. Does it add more with all this analysis?
No, I mean, it's whatever it is, it's just absolutely negligible. A lot of build tools and build pipelines have it built in automatically, and you may not even know it, that it's going on in there. Otherwise, there's tooling like in-toto run. You can see there's in-toto runner, like witness and things like this, that can just wrap your commands. And I think when we first did it, we did some timing tests, but it's like way less than like 0.00 something % or something. It just doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers.
You want to say goodbye? Okay, so thank you all. Goodbye.